Okay, let's get started and hopefully some more people will come on in. So welcome everyone and thanks for joining us today for our very first online panel, Harnessing Technology for Nonprofit Success. So we're so pleased to have gathered together these tech professionals for the discussion today. Each of them have years of experience in their respective fields. So before I get them to briefly introduce themselves, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement in the spirit of reconciliation. We acknowledge that the land upon which we gather is unceded Mi'kmaq territory, Agboola, Prince Edward Island. Mi'kmaq is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship, and we pay our respects to the Indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. So I think I'd like to take a few minutes to get our panel members to briefly introduce themselves with their name, the organization they are affiliated with, and perhaps a few words about the role they have in their organization. So Jessica, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Campbell. I lead the corporate partnerships portfolio here at the QE2 Foundation, QE2 Health Sciences Center here in Halifax, not QE2 on PEI. In my role, I would say I benefit from tech more than I lead it. So I have a lot of hands-on experience and day-to-day involvement with how the tech is actually used as a tool in my work. And I have the privilege of working with colleagues like Sara Russell, who's on the call with us, who are the brains behind the operations.
Awesome. Devon.
My name is Devon Strang. I've been working in social media for nonprofits for about 15 years, or maybe almost 20. Embarrassingly so, I guess. I'm currently the Digital Development Officer at Creative PEI. What does that mean? It means I know how to operate a computer, I guess. I do a little bit of everything, social media, website development, oversee some video production, write grants, help manage events. I worked with Evan before on a online training program that we did which is still actually ongoing now in its 4th year. So yeah, I do a little bit of everything. So I'm like your nerdy cousin that knows how to use a computer, I guess, is my credentials.
Awesome. Evan.
Yeah, hello, I'm Evan Lane. I'm currently the IT infrastructure administrator over at Workers' Compensation Board of PEI. I use technology for just about everything I do. I'm implementing new technologies, modernizing old technologies, and a lot of automating processes that exist in my current role. And I also do IT consulting on the side where I kind of help more targeted towards small business as well.
Awesome. Fadeke.
Hello, so my name is Fadeke Agboola, and I'm privileged to be part of this discussion because I co-founded Bauhaus, which is a nonprofit. And then because of my background in research, but basically scientific research, medical research, microbiology research, which have been opportune to work with a lot of data and analyzing data. And this background is what I'm bringing into nonprofit sector because it's so rich and there's so much to give.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a data enthusiast, like just because of my science background too, talking of genetics, like gene banks. And I just want to make sense of information and how it benefits whatever I am doing. And I want to transfer that to like beneficiaries so that they can also embrace technology, data, and most recently, artificial intelligence into bringing the best out of their endeavors.
Awesome. Thank you. And Sara.
Hi, I'm Sara. I also work at the QE2 Foundation in Halifax, not PEI. but happy to be here. I've worked for nonprofits of various different kinds and flavors for the past decade, including arts organizations, music festivals, and now a healthcare charity. So I'm the brand marketing manager here at the QE2 Foundation. So I manage a lot of our digital tools and properties and technologies, working with various other teams, and also I get to look at everything with kind of a front-facing brand lens too. So yeah, hopefully me and Jess bring a good left and right brain kind of approach to the discussion.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you all very much. Again, as I said, lots of experience in the room. So as I've noted, we are recording this, so this will be available afterwards on our new YouTube channel, which we're pretty happy about. We've been decided about a month ago that we were going to have those available because sometimes there's a lot of information coming at people, and I don't know about anybody else, but sometimes I like to go back and review and see what people said and make some notes. So to keep the flow going, for participants, if you have any specific questions, you can drop them in the chat and we'll look at them at the end for our panelists to answer if possible. So let's get started with our discussion questions. So I'll choose someone to start off each question and then give others the on the panel opportunity to give their answers as well. So Jessica and Sarah have decided to kind of tag team a little bit. So the first question, we'll start off with them and then the others can give their answers as well. So our first question is, how can nonprofits leverage social media and digital platforms to raise awareness and engage supporters?
So I'll start us off, and I think the big important word here is strategy. Knowing what you're doing, why you're doing it. It needs to have a purpose. There needs to be a plan behind it. Throwing content out there without having it attached to anything is a lot of work for the team and doesn't yield the results that you're going to be looking for. And we talk a lot about ROE in our world instead of ROI, so a return on energy or a return on effort. And ensuring that we are following that and using that as a guiding principle helps us to create those strategies that make our social purpose and our social use really effective. And it all comes back to values alignment and demonstrating that we're living those values. That helps us to build trust through those platforms with our brand. A big feature that we try and include is storytelling. And I think we all know that you'll forget sometimes what somebody said or what they did, but you will remember the way that they made you feel. And storytelling allows us to elicit those feelings. And so we want to make sure that we connect with and build a community with our audience, our donors, our supporters by storytelling. And so in healthcare philanthropy, often that includes perspectives from our patients, their family members, people who work within the health center and who work with the tools or resources that our donors help to provide. Also in my world, specifically in the corporate partnership side of things, I find that LinkedIn is a really strong tool for me in connecting with the corporate audience. So whether it's check presentations or impact story sharing, it allows us to also learn about those corporates and how they're engaging, what they're reacting to, and get to know the people behind those brands, and it really helps with that relationship development and also credibility building within that corporate space.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
Just a couple of things to add. We, at the QEII Foundation, we have a bit of a corporate voice. So social media is an opportunity for us to not be that corporate voice. So I would say, like, look at social media perhaps in a different way than you would look at your other public-facing communications, and really take it as an opportunity to humanize yourself. Because social media, as we know, we get lots of those messages. It is the direct line of communication. So you do want to kind of be more of the human element on social media and take advantage of the approachability of social media. And, if you're getting a lot of questions online, you could host a Q&A through social media, things like that, where, you know, you kind of taking the scariness out of being an organization and making it more of that person. Yeah.
Fadeke, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I want to add to what Jessica and Sarah had said in the aspect of number one, like Jessica said, you have to streamline what you're doing to target your mission.
Mhm.
So what platform? So if you really want success and raise more awareness, so you want to really decide, what am I looking for? Am I looking for donors, increased donation?
Yes.
Am I looking for more people engagement, like beneficial engagement? And what kind of content do I want to share? So LinkedIn, for instance, if you want to share like really professional thing, showing your professional body. But then you can also have other things, like if your content is mostly on video, like videos. So like Instagram is not bad. I know people have the fear, like even the word technology itself or social media, it's a put off for most people. And I've heard people in nonprofit and community engagement places where they would say, no, we want the human touch. We don't want to like it's almost like saying going on social media or using technology is going against the purpose of community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not entirely true, because of the journey of things so far, the way the world has moved, what like the generation right now, who are we targeting? Where are they mostly? Like, sometimes I think about like the time COVID happened, things that used to be done physically wasn't being done because of the pandemic. So it gave more people to be like content creators on social media. So you could have two. And then if you know like ongoing things, like for instance, people used to use Twitter a lot until it became X and people were like flocking out of it. Since the result of the election, a lot of people have gone out of it. Like, you know what's happening, you're also informed of what's happening out there, and then you can also adjust and move, like, you know, people are moving, like, so there is that, like, a lot of people don't want to use like AI with their platform.
Mm-hmm.
On Facebook, you have the option. So if you know how to like, and a lot of these platforms also have training things in them. Like they will train you. They have like specialized things for non-profit. So you see Facebook for non-profit, you'd see like Instagram for non-profit, or like subsidized rate. And then like staying informed would also help to increase the awareness, you know, where to go. Like, so for instance, if you're just starting up today, you want to choose a platform. Definitely you don't want to go to Twitter because people are leaving. But you might want to try Blue Sky, because 1 million subscribers every day on Blue Sky since like a week ago. And so depending on what you want, for instance, so because, you know, yeah, so if you want donation, if you want people who would engage in discussion, you could have groups, which also help. Like you could have both a page and a group on any of these social platform, and the group can be streamlined or personalized in such a way that it will help your mission. You don't just
So knowing which platform is working the best for your type of organization. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Devon, your thoughts? Oh,
It's
we
certainly
lost.
better.
Yep.
That's a big question. Social media has just grown and grown and grown and grown. When I started, MySpace was kind of the thing that we would all be talking about in a panel like this. So Obviously, that's no longer the thing, but then Facebook quickly became the thing that replaced that. And now it's no longer the thing, or is it still a thing? It's certainly still huge. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking too much about which platform anymore because there are so many and the audiences are so spread apart. I mean, it is certainly some people will have more success, depending, different organizations that have more success. I mean, and depending on your goal, obviously LinkedIn and Snapchat and Instagram are very different social networks. I would say currently, I mean, the way we look at it is we're a very small organization. I was the second employee at Creative PEI 4 years ago when I started. And ultimately who we serve is creative sector workers on Prince Edward Island. We estimate there's about 2,000 people that fit that description. So we're trying to create programming and initiatives that serve those people. So where will I find those people on social media? I mean, obviously, we're going to be on Facebook because it's kind of, your baseline. Most people have an account, even if they don't check in very often. Instagram, I would say, is probably the most popular or current social network on Prince Edward Island if you want to reach the most people quickly, especially in our demographic of either younger people. By younger, I mean, 20 to 45, and then and people who are creative and like to see visual things. So most of our time is spent on Facebook and Instagram. We did used to use Twitter a bit. Obviously, throughout my career, I've always found that the audience you're going to reach on Twitter is more media or peers rather than a general audience. I think it was always more of a niche information network than a true social network. So really, the way I look at our social media now is basically I'm using it. I have such disdain for most of these companies. I guess I'll just say it. That what I really want to do is use social media to filter people to other things now, like primarily our email newsletter. Especially so if we can reach 2,000 creative sector workers and then maybe another 2,000 people who are very supportive of the sector or who follow the sector or who are stakeholders in our sector in some way, whether they're government or business or what have you. Surely I can filter most of those people onto an email newsletter. I mean, I don't want to abandon social media, but even Facebook in the last couple of months, I used to have a really great curated feed of pages that the Creative PEI page followed, which was all of our peers and stakeholders in the industry. And I found even in the last month, Facebook has started just injecting you might be interested in content into that feed, which has rendered that feed to be almost unusable now because they will, and I mean, much of the content is interesting, but I don't need to know what every art gallery in Ontario and the United States is doing because it's not really relevant. I mean, there might be a lot of great ideas, but what I'm there for is really more actionable information that I can share with our stakeholders and our audience. So anyway, now that I've gotten that out of the way, one thing that I always recommend to people who aren't quite sure how to start their social media journey, like as a professional publisher or somebody who's posting for with a strategy in mind, is to always have a content calendar because it really focuses your mind when you know that we want to post those photos of the event on Tuesday. Well, we're going to need to have those photos completed by this Thursday kind of thing. So there's some kind of structure. I find it just really focuses the mind, especially if you're collaborating with other people, photographers, or maybe you're managing someone who does your social media or that kind of thing. So, and it really helps to plot out what kind of content you want to make. Maybe you have some other content that you can reuse, something that you could share once or twice a month that's kind of evergreen. So I find I always recommend that people kind of start with a calendar and maybe even plot out the whole year. Maybe a lot of the stuff can be, TB to be confirmed or to be determined or that kind of thing, but just having it in front of you like that is quite helpful, I find.
Evan, you work for workers' comp. Does that kind of organization, does that make a difference to the work that you're doing? Like social media platforms, I mean?
So in my role, I don't really directly work too much with kind of, we have our own communications team that handle a lot of this stuff, but we do help them out with if they're looking for tools or ideas for platforms or stuff like that. We'll help them out with that. So, and we did have a conversation actually for a communication team really recently that I think really ties into this conversation as well. And kind of really directly onto kind of Jessica's mention about kind of the return on effort. A big part of, you could be doing all this work on these different social media platforms or using, digital tools to kind of do your email newsletters. But at the end of the day, if you're not sure how many people you're actually engaging with who are actually coming in and looking at what you're doing, it could be a lot of effort that you don't really know what the return is. And that's where like using kind of additional platforms, maybe outside of the social media world, where you have, say if you're linking to things on your website, in your newsletter, for example, kind of like Devon mentioned, how do you know how many people are clicking through to find out and look at that stuff? So using some tools like that to kind of, do some analytics and tracking of where people are engaging and what people are looking at. So then you can get an idea whenever you have a content calendar of, what was really working, what were people really engaging with, and then you can adjust your content calendar to use more of those tools so you get more of that engagement. So figuring out kind of some sort of tool to kind of tie your social media presence into, so you can track some of this stuff and kind of get some analytics so that you get an idea of the return on effort. And that was something we were kind of struggling with, and we've kind of come up with a solution. Mostly the media team, our communications team, kind of came up with that, but yeah, we're constantly kind of in between here at Workers' Comp, because we are both targeting employers and employees of every organization on PEI for our communications. So I know they're on pretty much every social media platform, and we're constantly kind of figuring out if they need to add more. And then we have to kind of look at it from a privacy aspect of, is it appropriate for us to be on that social media platform because of, some things that may be happening in the news regarding certain media platforms, and whether or not, being a crown corporation, we should be on those platforms. So that is a huge thing, because I know from our point of view, we're more on the government side. So we have to follow both, like we operate like a nonprofit, but we are government at the end of the day. So we have to follow all the government rules. And then also we don't really get to benefit too much from all the nonprofit rules, where like whenever we talk about like Freedom of Information and Privacy Act, since we're government, we have to follow that, but like nonprofits, it doesn't actually apply to nonprofits. So in that regard, it's more of like a nice to have for nonprofits. So.
Well, thank you for that. So let's start Devon off with the next question. Our next question is, what role does generative AI play in improving organizational efficiency and effectiveness in a nonprofit organization? Have you found that?
That's a great question. And I haven't, so as much as I'm your nerdy staff member, I guess something I've learned in my 20 years of working with technology is that I'm no longer the first to put my hand up and try something new. So the AI hype cycle, I've kind of been somewhat skeptical of, although once I signed up to do this panel, I realized I had to do a bit of research so I could seem like I knew what I was talking about. And I do keep an eye on it. And it is quite interesting. I mean, certainly in the creative sector where I work, it's something that we're also kind of wary of, because much of it outright steals from creative people, whether it's text on the internet or images. So that's something that we're not the biggest cheerleaders of AI quite yet. But I did attend an interesting presentation, another webinar last week, and the woman who was presenting, she was high up in kind of a corporate position, or had several corporate positions in the United States with very large companies. And she was very interesting. She had a whole matrix set out in an Excel file, which listed all of the tasks that she regularly does in her job. And then whether that task could be, is there any AI that can assist her in that task yet? Yes, somewhat, and no kind of thing, where how she had all her cells laid out, and then what percentage of that task can she delegate to AI at this point? 20%, 30%. Do I need to keep a human being in the loop on this task? Yes or no kind of thing. So I thought she had a very realistic kind of perspective. And she even said at the start, she was very enthusiastic a couple of years ago when ChatGPT launched, and her enthusiasm has been somewhat tempered, not extinguished certainly, but she realizes it's going to be a bit longer. She says that she doesn't, AI is for delegating, so it's your scalable workforce. It's not for replacing yet. So she would do a lot of content creation, like create podcasts, create blog posts, create videos. So I would say on average, she would be finding returns of like 10 to 20% in terms of efficiency on each one of her tasks, which is great for someone who maybe does the same thing all day long. Say if you're just a video editor, if you're just a podcast editor, if you're just a content writer, and you're getting 20% return on efficiency, well, that'd be fantastic. Someone like myself, where I do 10 different types of things a day, to get slightly more efficient at each one of those things at this point, I don't know if it's worth the investment at this point to get 5% better at writing a blog post when I only write a blog post once a month or something like that. But it certainly is interesting. I mean, I encourage everyone to kind of Google, or I guess Perplexity AI is kind of the answer engine now that's kind of replacing Google, which I do find to be quite interesting. But just look up, top 10, top 20 AI tools, and just to get a sense of what kind of tools are out there. Of course, each one of those is going to come with a fee if you want, a useful package. So then there's going to be a cost. So now is it 5 to 10 to 20% improvement in efficiency worth the extra money you're going to be paying? I mean, that's something you're going to have to answer, but it's certainly an interesting field, but it's not one that I've dove in headfirst on yet.
Okay. Jessica and Sarah, your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I began as a certified AI hater, but it's not going anywhere. So you got to embrace it. And also people at our org use it. So we were kind of thinking like, what's the risk with AI and like that approach? So I think an org of any size, even if you're only a few members, it's not that you have to establish like an AI policy, but I think it would be really helpful in letting an AI policy of some kind of guide where you feel safe to play around with AI. So Devon, talking about creatives, you wouldn't want AI, like generative AI, to be the output of your marketing campaign, for example, but it is a great jumping off point. Talking to AI in a way like for brainstorming, or looking at past campaigns and reporting and things like that. So I think you'd want to know like where your comfort level with AI is. Is it just in the idea stage? Is it in the generative and the development stage where you can kind of have some parts of AI help you generate content? Or, do you want to be hands-off and just let it do things like reporting and analysis? So I think, yeah, looking to your org values will really help there. Really great efficiency opportunity for orgs to look at with AI is leveraging platforms you already use. So Facebook, Meta Ads, they've got lots of AI options in their ad manager. Play with it. Put in the images that represent your brand, some taglines, and just see what output it gives you. And if it feels like it fits in with your brand, that's great. And if it doesn't, then maybe you should wait a while or hands off it for now. Yeah, the big thing for our org is trust. So we wouldn't use generative AI, to fill in a hospital background that we've got a face in the for, but we would use it, maybe to assist certain video editing parts that are quite time consuming. Just wanted to throw an example out. There was a Halifax Transit ad recently that used a stock image of a woman on a bus, but it was obviously AI. And I don't think they knew that the stock image they bought of the lady on the bus was AI. So people were quick to jump in and say, why don't you use a real person? So just wanted to throw that out there for consideration too. If you are going to put something out that's AI driven, just be prepared to speak on it. Maybe they had a really great reason for using it, but they didn't tell us, so we don't know. So yeah, just being aware of that kind of landscape and hidden biases with AI too, like why did it generate a white woman? Things like that. I think you got to kind of bring a bit of a critical lens to that content when it's being made by machine learning. So yeah, I would say like definitely there's so many efficiencies, but maybe just look to where you're already using and what tools you're already using and find the opportunities within that, like Meta Ads.
Jessica, sorry.
I can confidently say I have nothing more to add.
Okay. Your thoughts? Do you have it? Oh.
So definitely I have used a little bit of AI. I'm not a pro. I don't know the code or the bytecode and behind it. But I must say that um, it, um, it definitely helped with repetitive tasks. So it's just like email, like automating your email to give a response when you travel or when you're not available. Is those kind of automation. So I want to look at it in the angle of those kind of automation, and it will also depend on what you are doing. So for instance, Sarah did mention about integration of AI if you want to use it into most of the social media platforms that we've been discussing earlier on. So it could just be something like you want to personalize your outreach. So there's some aspects where it will come handy and it's not messing up with you're not necessarily creating something that is not on that is unreal from it, but you're just giving it information to process for you, or like giving it information to support even your ideas, like, and then that way it saves time. So for example, if you want to you want to write a grant for funding, and you only have 2 or 3 people working in an organization, your nonprofit organization, you're the one that have your ideas, right? You could use some tools to help you, like even like a metadata from AI, because it's going to access a lot of information, a lot of input. I sometimes I see AI as a community, like a community intelligence not coming from just me or from one person. Like, so I know there's a lot of questions about are those data are they supposed to be private, or are they supposed to be used? Are they supposed to be to be are they sold? Are they stolen? Things like that. But there's a lot of information out there that comes together and give us community intelligence, and that is how I say it. So it can help to like streamline some processes. It can even like um um customize, personalize email marketing. Like, so some of these tools have tracking tools with them, like analysis. Like social medias have some analytic tools with them to know how much people you reach out to, how many people saw your video, how many people read your document, how many people read your policy. And with that analysis tools, which has been integrated with some AI tools, you can get conclusion, you can get a decision, you can adjust your plans, even in programming. So for instance, I have a program from my organization that we want to throw out there to help a certain demographic of beneficiary, but I don't know how it's going to come out yet. There are some AI tools that could help you, like give you like stimulate a scenario just for you to have an idea what would happen before it happens, right? And then with that result of that scenario simulation, you can adjust your plans even before you get it done. You know, you're still the face. It's just helping and assisting in a way. And most of these things at the moment are not like you get what Amazon will have something for nonprofit as long as your nonprofit is registered. So you don't even have to invest money in it. People are out there right now. A lot of all these tech organizations like Google Workplace, Google for Nonprofit, they all have an aspect just to encourage nonprofit people in the charitable space, in community space, to see the benefits of these things, to try it out without expense to them if they can, and then to see if it works for them or not. Microsoft, they have all of those things, right? So
yeah. Sandy made the comment, what about grant writing? I've heard of people paying for GPT and training a GPT on your org documentation and tell the AI its job description as a grant writer and use it as grant writer, and the actual grant writer will go in to correct the 20% that isn't filled. Has anyone else used it for grant writing?
I've heard of this too in the music industry, particularly. I would say that it would be a good use of AI. Grant writing is really tedious and also expensive for small businesses and independent artists to take advantage of. So I think it would be a good efficiency, but you don't want to lose your voice. We all have unique voices, especially Atlantic Canadian voices. There's certain things we would say that ChatGPT would never say, and I think, don't lose sight of that. I think it's a great efficiency when you have the requirements for a grant. You can use it to kind of make sure you're meeting everything, but definitely get that human touch on it throughout the whole way. Make sure you're checking in. Would I have said it this way? Tweak it, and make sure that it feels authentic to you. But yeah, I think that's a great use of it, to be honest. And I think, as long as you and even paying a grant writer just at the end stage to make sure it's all ready to go, I think would be a better use of funds, or, your own budget. If that answers.
I think so. In because of timing, we're going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to get Evan to start with this one, because this is his thing, his alleyway. So the next question, we'll start with you, Evan. How can nonprofits ensure data security and privacy compliance while leveraging technology?
So this is a really tricky and very intricate question, but I'll try to break it down as piecemeal as I can. So to start off, there's some really good resources available now. The federal government of Canada actually has put up what they call, I brought it up here, they call it the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. And I'll put it in the chat here so people can go and take a look. They've basically kind of gone through and provided they have a section for small business, small, medium-sized businesses. They have some for large organizations. They have some for government institutes, academia, or personal individuals. And they have a whole lot of guides on what you can do and how you can kind of try to align. They have a small business guide specifically that you can kind of walk through, and they kind of would more or less regurgitate anything I would kind of tell people starting out. Which is like things like have a password manager right from the get-go, because that's how people are going to get into your accounts. You want really long and intricate passwords. You don't want just like 8 characters. I think could be broken in like less than 3 minutes now by like the average computer. So we're not talking people who have like big mainframes or anything. Like my laptop could break an 8-character password in probably about a minute. So things like that. And then like you can go into like using MFA to protect yourselves. So like every time anyone signs up for any accounts for anything online, making sure you have either, have a little app attached to it that gives you like that one-time code that people are probably got a little annoyed with whenever everyone was rolling those out. But those are more or less what's keeping your account from being hacked, because passwords are so easy to break now that you need 1, 2, or 3 different kind of ways to say yes, I am who I am when I'm logging in. And just keeping risk in mind when you're using tools online is kind of the other thing. Like we're going to get a lot of benefits from using this tool, but what are the risks associated to using it? And also things like being aware of privacy laws is a huge part of that too, right? Because if you're putting your own, like people who you're trying to benefit and help, if you're putting their personal information into a database somewhere online, you need to make sure that that resides in Canada. Once that's part of FOIP, but that doesn't quite apply to nonprofits because you guys are exempt from it. So it's more of like a best effort thing, especially from my end working in government. Like anything that would be stored outside of Canada, we just cannot use. So like some things within like the Microsoft 365 tenant and like the Google Workplace for nonprofits or for business, there's tools in that for some reason are just stored outside of Canada. Like the big one I can name right off the top of my head, because we have people ask all the time to use it at our workplace, is Microsoft Forms. everything from Microsoft Forms is stored in the US. There's no way to change it unless you live in the EU. Canada's kind of in a nowhere land there. So things like that, just acknowledging the risk when you look at these tools and knowing like what's actually going on with where they're being stored and whether or not things are encrypted and things like that. Like you want to make sure that if people were to ever get access to the information within your organization, that they're not getting all your clients' information and putting up as much barriers to getting into that. Managing what software and logins people are logging into, just having a list of that so you know, and then if you see in the news that such software got hacked, then like you may have to look out that some information that if you were using it could happen, even if it's in Canada, they could get hacked, and then you need to know, okay, what was in there? Should we tell people that, that could have happened because we were using that software? And other things like training and knowing what to look at, like if you get an email from a malicious source and kind of training people what that looks like, as well as having like antivirus and firewalls and stuff like that at the workplace or when you're on the go using a VPN. If you're on public Wi-Fi, please always use a VPN. Don't just go on public Wi-Fi. And then any other certifications and stuff that if you're doing business, like taking payments, making sure that you're adhering to like PCI compliancy, making sure that your payments provider, if you're using like Square and stuff, just making sure that you're aware that they need to meet that, and Square does. So that's a very common one that small businesses and nonprofits use. So just making sure that when you look at if you want to change to get a cheaper option, that they also have that compliancy, because otherwise you could get in trouble because there's specific kind of network things that need to be set up if you're using one that doesn't provide you an already PCI compliant system. I'll pass this over to anyone else if anyone else wants to add anything. I could talk about this for hours.
Topic. Does anybody else on the panel have something to add on that one?
Yeah, I'm just gonna add one thing to it, which is what we should never forget to do when we're getting information, when nonprofits are collecting information from people, which is to mean like you have to get an approval, like you have to have like a mechanism that would opt-in mechanism or a sign-up mechanism, and then whenever we're talking with our stakeholders, they should also be aware of what you're using people's personal information for, where it is stored, how long you're going to hold on to it, because this is also part of like data collection, privacy rules. That's it. Thank you.
Sarah,
I just wanted to add, don't upload personal private donor information into ChatGPT ever.
Ever.
Yeah,
like,
so just same kind of thing. Data in general, there could be anything, but there's personal private data which you don't want to be uploading and sharing to sources that don't encrypt and aren't trusted. So just generally there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Fadeke, we're going to start you off with this next question. What are the key considerations when selecting and implementing technology solutions for nonprofit operations?
But again, one of the most important things is to select technologies that work specifically for you, for your mission, for your course. So I'll give an example. If you are more of your course or your mission is people focus, you need that relationship with people, you need donors, then maybe your the first thing you're selecting in the first place is maybe a CRM software, or like something that would manage a relationship or manage collection, or and that will maintain it. And then you want to make sure that you're not just choosing because it's affordable. You want something that is scalable, because that would see that there's a continuity in what you're doing. So before you start jumping in. I'll give a personal example. When I first wanted to have a website, because I didn't have much, I saw a platform called Udo. I didn't know much about, but I was in a hurry and I didn't do my due diligence. I went ahead and did put so much work and effort on it, because we like, the website is still part of our technological tools. Like, but then it took a while for me to realize that no, I need to plan for this thing. You don't just jump into it because you're in a hurry, because at the end of the day, you waste all those efforts that you have put into working on or with a particular technology or a particular tool, and then you cannot integrate it to maybe what you're using before or what you want to use in the next future. So then you want to be sure of your costs. You want to be sure of security. So, and that's why I really like what Evan was saying about storing data outside of Canada. So for instance, if you're using any tool, any technology tool, you want to select it or you want to implement it, you want to be sure that you do your due diligence to be sure that the vendor is compliant, the security is compliant, and you want to go through their own policies too and make sure that things are all right. And in case we ever like get confused, there's always like that information that Eva put, where to go and look for correct information before making a final decision.
Devon, your thoughts on that?
Certainly one thing that's always front of mind when you're choosing different solutions is cost. So of course, we're always trying to find the free tier of any kind of piece of software we're using, which is surprisingly doable up to a certain point. Another thing that's certainly, you want to have somebody, I find, that's going to champion that piece of software, and who's really going to, kind of drive the implementation of it. So things that we use are, I'm always a fan of like an online project manager, just to keep various conversations in one place. So something like I'm a big fan of Basecamp, which is something that I've used for almost 20 years, but it's gotten more and more expensive over the last few years. So currently we're using a free tier of Asana, which is fine for it's a good software as well. And it's good for our use. But ultimately, why we made that decision was because I think we can have maybe 10 or 12 kind of users before you have to start paying, sort of thing. So it fits our situation well. But ultimately, you have to have somebody who's really going to drive it home. I just find that, I guess, like maybe it's because I am the nerd and I get more excited about these types of things than other people. But if you leave something to a committee or there isn't somebody who's a real champion of a tool, it may not really get used to its potential or may not even really get used at all, sort of thing. Certainly that's something I find anytime that there's a few users of something. And I mean, if it's just something I use myself and no one else cares about, then I guess no one else really cares. So it's up to me. But certainly if it's something that a few people are going to be using, I mean, we use Canva. We've had great buy-in on that because it's easy to use and people enjoy it. People are fine with Asana. Our email marketing, we just use MailChimp, and it's just one or two of us who ever touch that kind of thing. So ultimately, having one person who's going to take ownership and say, I'm going to learn how to use this tool inside out, and I'm going to be the resource for the team. I find that's kind of the most important thing after cost, or perhaps equal to.
Evan, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a big one I would kind of talk about here, especially whenever you're looking at any kind of new software. A lot of these software companies actually provide nonprofit pricing. If you let them know that you're a nonprofit right from the get-go, and you talk about your requirements, if like, for example, you need everything to reside in Canada, they'll help you along with that process and set you up and also give you a pretty decent discount depending on the software vendor. Like I think we just talked about Asana. I think if you want to use theirs, I think they have a 50% discount for nonprofits. Just looked it up here now. So there's all sorts of options from that point of view. And another thing I'd like to talk about is supporting open source programs. So there's kind of a nonprofit equivalent in the software industry called open source. So these are usually companies that are making software for the world, and their goal is for it to be open. People can go and use it. usually for free. And then if you want like volunteer support, you'll contact them and pay them for that. But usually they provide you the whole solution for free. And it's kind of that area of like, oh, if it's free, like what are they getting from it? Are they stealing our data? So if you make sure that they're an open source program, they're providing it for free, and they're like us, they're nonprofits, they're operating as nonprofits. Probably like a huge big example of that would be Mozilla Firefox. The Mozilla Foundation is one of the largest software development nonprofits out there. And Mozilla Firefox is an open source program. They do everything with kind of a privacy lens. They do have like a for-profit entity alongside them as well, where they do some for-profit stuff. So looking into stuff like that would be big. And then there's other providers as well that help with that kind of stuff too. Like I think TechSoup in Canada as well kind of helps people who are nonprofit looking for nonprofit software and stuff. And you'd be surprised what you could reach out to and find out. Like Microsoft and Google as well, they both have nonprofit solutions and nonprofit pricing. So if you're not actively using any of that stuff as a nonprofit, or your vendor doesn't know, reach out to them and let them know.
Thank you very much, Evan. We have some questions, but we'll get to those at the end. We're going to circle back now to Jessica and Sara for one of our final questions. What are some best practices for nonprofits to effectively leverage technology to enhance their operations and impact? Your thoughts?
Back to strategy. Overall, just going back to what are the goals, what is the impact, using ROE as a guiding principle. What's the cost to implement and adopt, and not just, the hard costs we were just talking about, but how many people need to be trained up on that? What's the time involved in learning that new process? What processes are you needing to run in tandem in order to continue to execute on your goals and to have that line of continuity? The values alignment, ensuring that there's a plan in place that encompasses all of this, including how you will evaluate the success and what metrics are you going to be looking at, engaging your stakeholders for their feedback, and constantly being willing to look at those metrics and to learn from it and be willing to be wrong and evolve and course correct, not so caught up in, well, we invested and we're here, so we have to run the course. That can be more expensive than identifying when you're not in the place that you should be in, and being willing to look at other options. And if you've known your purpose and your goal and your intended impact from the outset, then you'll be able to benchmark against that as you work through.
Sara?
Just super generally, and high level, I would say that strategic approach is really beneficial, especially if you want to look at kind of opportunities as a whole. Also, what tools are you currently using? And also looking for what can talk to each other, and what are the API opportunities for efficiency, and take yourself out as the middleman if there are API opportunities. Just thinking, for example, of the million apps that are already integrated with MailChimp, like, do you have some of those connectivities you can take advantage of and things like that, and just kind of remove yourself a bit for efficiency. But that does require taking a bit of a step back and analyzing what are all the digital tools we're using, and what talks to each other, and is there opportunity for customization. Just super quickly, we use Fundraising, not with a D, Fundraising, to kind of manage a lot of our donations. And there's API opportunities built in that, but they're also open to customization. So we've actually worked with them on some custom coding that their team activated for us, that has been really helpful for efficiency. So yeah, just see what's out there for customization too, and don't be afraid to ask. And maybe there's a grant you could apply for to help pay for some of it. You never know.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have some thoughts on this?
Just one thing, to enhance operation, in addition to what they've said, another thing we could do is to like seek partnership with maybe universities or colleges um, 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 for digital projects. A lot of like even graduate students or undergraduate students, they are developing like um, they are working on projects or like on digital platforms that can directly or indirectly we could impact our course and our mission and can cut costs and help to get that help to support our human resource in a way.
Absolutely. Anyone else? I was going to ask the questions in the chat, but Evan's been answering them quite nicely for us. Thank you. About VPNs and all that stuff. Does anybody participating today have any specific questions for our panel that beyond this? Oh, here we go. With TikTok becoming an increasingly popular platform for content creation, is it an ideal tool for nonprofits to leverage? If so, how can nonprofits effectively use it to engage their audience, raise awareness, and drive action? Your thoughts on TikTok?
We kind of decided not to activate on TikTok strategically because it wasn't the right opportunity for us. But if it was the right opportunity for your org, I think definitely there's a space for nonprofits on TikTok, especially what we talked about before with like human impact and storytelling. TikTok is storytelling through and through. You know, there is advertising on it too. We've dabbled with ads on TikTok, which have been performed really well. But I think if you've got a storytelling opportunity, why not? If it's the right fit for you. But definitely set some measurables up. What does success look like for you? Is it just maybe gaining some followers, or is it clicks, or is it getting people, you know, aware of your brand? So I think just being really open to what success looks like when you do decide to kind of you know, take on a new avenue like that. But yeah, storytelling is huge there. So good opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, thank you. Any more questions? We are at 2:00. No more questions. So thank you to our panelists for joining us today. We really appreciate your insight in the topic that's essential. It is essential today for running a nonprofit organization. And thank you to everyone who participated and sat in on our very first panel discussion. We'll be hosting 2 more in the new year on different topics. So please watch for those. Oh, sorry. Monique wants to know, is it best to get these platforms monetized? Not sure.
I'd say build your audience first, and then as a charity, obviously monetization is very helpful, but I would say build first, monetize later, just generally.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, this video will be on our YouTube channel. I'm thinking by the end of the day. But if anybody has any questions for me or any of the panelists, send them along to me and I will make sure they land in the right place. So yeah, thanks very much, everyone. And I wish everyone a wonderful evening.